Okay, we are now 2 days removed from the USA's exit from the Copa America, an early exit in the group stages. This is how Group C finished up, with Uruguay as group leaders and Panama as runners-up. The US won one game and lost two of them. So now, does something change or does it all stay the same? Sebastian Salazar joins us now to talk more about it. And for those of you who keep up to date with our articles on the website, you'll have seen a recent one from Ryan O'Hanlon. Basically, the crux of it is that the USA are not as good as they think they are. And I thought about you when I read it, Sebi. I wondered what you were thinking when you read this. I was thinking, I need to hear from Sebi. So here you are. Tell us what you've got to say.
I would take two primary exceptions with the article. And I know Ryan O'Hanlon well. I know he doesn't always write his titles, but I'll start with the title. The U.S. isn't as good as it thinks. Who? The entirety of the country? Look, this is written in the aftermath of a group stage exit. So basically what you're saying is the U.S. isn't as good as it thinks, and it thinks it was good enough to get out of this group stage. Do I need to remind people who was in this group? It was Panama and Bolivia. Nobody was saying the U.S. was going to beat Uruguay and win this group. They had to finish second. There is not one player in the Bolivian pool or the Panamanian pool that would get into the U.S. 11 or even the U.S. 23. And if there is, I would like either Ryan O'Hanlon or somebody on the desk there to point that player out to me, and then we can have that debate. The U.S. was absolutely good enough to get through the group phase here. So I take exception with the title. I also take exception with the premise. None of the U.S. young talents have hit what Ryan says is best case scenario. What is best case scenario? And why are we judging guys who are midway through their career? Christian Pulisic is the oldest of this bunch. He's 25 years old. Is that when we're writing guys off now? And by the way, Christian Pulisic has won a Champions League. That's not good enough for Ryan O'Hanlon. That's not good enough to beat Panama and Bolivia. And of the other players that he chose that hadn't lived up to the hype, he also left out the guy you're seeing at left back there, Anthony Robinson, who, by the way, has blossomed into one of the best left backs in the Premier League. So very selective. If you want to know why, if you really want to understand why the U.S. is underwhelming, you got to do an honest analysis of the minutes played at club level. And what you will see of this 11 that you're looking at right now for Uruguay is that there are only 4 guys in this 11 that are locked down, locked in, every week starters for their club teams. That means a majority of the guys are not. And so when you have a team full of role players, I think that shows in the big moments. And it's that and the combination of the national team manager, Greg Berhalter, and his shortcomings, which is why the U.S. is going home at the group stage, not because they weren't good enough to get past Panama and Bolivia, and not because they're not as good as we think. Because we don't think they're better than Uruguay. We think they're better than Panama and Bolivia, and that's obvious.
Is the expectation, though, when you look at the article, obviously the names that some of them that Sebi's brought up there, is that when you looked at them a few years ago, you were looking at the promise that these names delivered and thinking that maybe they would be doing more than they are for their domestic sides right now. This is what Ryan's trying to make a point in some of his article, and it hasn't happened.
You know, I think there's one thing to have potential. And there's a lot of players that have potential, but in order for that potential to become something, you have to do the reps and you have to do the minutes. And I think it's really important that too many of this United States side haven't got the minutes behind them. And so, yes, when it's an even playing field and you're playing Bolivia and Panama, then you expect to beat them. But what you don't expect to do is play against Panama in particular, a man down. And so the players on the field don't have the minutes behind them to cope with that. Regardless of whether you think Panama is any good or not, it just means that if Panama physically are at it, it is so tough when you're a man down. So there doesn't seem to be anybody in the middle here. You've got a group of people who, like Ryan is saying, who do they think they are? Do they think they're the next Brazil? But then you have the complete opposite of, listen, this is a young team that could be so good, and this young generation and this golden generation. And so there's no middle ground here. It's either catastrophe or it's fantastic for most people. Yeah, but when they should be looking at the real problem. And I don't believe that Berhalter's the problem. The reason they didn't qualify is because they were down a man after 18 minutes. And the fact is, because you only play the amount of
Stevie,
games
there
we
were
do in this
72
tournament.
minutes after the red card for the 10 players on the field. Had they been more experienced to do what you're talking about and bail their teammate out, the manager could have done something in those 72 minutes. There's the 90 minutes against Uruguay where if this team was more experienced, maybe they can nick a result there. Maybe they don't give up a goal late in that game. Maybe they do get something. You don't have to be...
And here's the thing. I keep hearing everybody saying, well, he could have done something. Not just you. He could have... What did the manager do?
Stevie, he sat on his hands for 27 minutes in the first half. He did nothing.
What does the manager do with 10 men?
Stevie, they scored a goal to go up 1-0. He could have made defensive changes there. He sat on his hands. What happened? Panama equalized. And then what happened? Panama grabbed control of the game, Stevie, and they never gave it up. And the indictment, the proof that Greg Berhalter missed is that he didn't make any subs. And what does he do at the half? Emergency, 3 subs, panic alarms.
Let me ask you a question.
That's the proof. He sat on his hands and he missed it. He got caught with his pants down. He didn't have a plan for a red card early in a tournament. And the other proof of that is he started Tyler Adams, knowing he was going to have to take him off.
You're blaming Berhalter, right?
Absolutely, I'm blaming Berhalter.
They had defenders in position.
And he threw Timway under the bus. You can't just say, oh, one thing happened.
Do you want me to answer the question? They had defenders in position to defend. Full stop. The defenders were at fault. They didn't do their job. That's not Berhalter's fault. Listen, I'd be with you if there was holes all over the place. Absolutely, I would be with you, Seb. But there wasn't holes all over the place.
I think
they were 1-0 up. They were solid. Panama didn't look like scoring. They had people in position to defend, and they didn't do their job. That's not Berhalter's fault.
The conversation will continue on Football America. You can catch it twice a week. And I think that is Stevie's ticket to appear on the show. What did you think? That is